Welcome back, friends. The sequel, Part 2, Astral Rescue Operations at Earthquake Sites. Certainly advise you to watch Part 1 first. When the first awakenings heralded the truth of their being in heaven, their many reactions to their death from physical life was marked shock and grief. Many slumped back into a coma of peaceful sleep before reawakening to find themselves in a beautiful convalescent room, either on their own or with other casualties from their family or friends. The communal rooms proved to be a mixture of reunion and heartache. For most patients, a comfort was to be found alongside loved ones they knew well, in the same position as themselves. But not all members of the family or associate group would be present. Inevitably, some had been left behind on Earth, survivors in your world cut off now from those that once surrounded them. The grief on both sides was inconsolable. All our highly trained nurses, auxiliaries, counselors, doctors, and psychiatrists were working overtime to bring as much compassion and understanding to bear upon the harrowing scenes of bereavement. Hysteria and anger followed as the frustration of being unable to reconcile the situation set into their minds and hearts. Long experience over the centuries has taught us in heaven to simply let each individual vent their anguish openly and in complete freedom until they slowly calm down towards resignation. The deep emotions react in many different forms. Some souls lie sullenly withdrawn for some time. Some charge about ranting and raving. Some just cry and sob, unable to control the endless tears of tortuous sorrow. Some wander the grounds of the convalescent center they are in, trying to find a way of escape. Others overeat, overdrink, overtalk, overreact to those who are trying hard to comfort them. Some have even been known to attack the helpers in their bottled up anger and rage over the inevitability of their passing. This description, may puzzle many of you who have become aware of the countless reports of near-death experiences on Earth, during which many of men or women have out-of-body experiences during a short interval of so-called death, and describe feeling such ecstasy and bliss with a strong desire to remain in this state. The bitter disappointment of coming back is deeply felt and unwanted. Why, you may ask, is it so different in this aftermath of the ocean earthquake catastrophe? For one very good reason. There were thousands upon thousands passing over from very sudden death. This mass of consciousness had changed from physical to spiritual existence within seconds, perhaps minutes, some a little longer maybe. The impact of such an enormously traumatic transition creates an equally enormous shock reaction, which has to release itself in whichever way it erupts, according to the personalities of each soul. Nevertheless, heaven's strong healing radiance and bliss will still permeate each individual soul throughout their transition, helping to sustain them in their moments of quiet or calm until it ultimately grows in strength and stability. No temperament from the physical life changes in spirit. You are what you are on earth and then again in heaven. The only difference is that you will become younger in face and body, like a gradual change back to the age of your prime if you were previously of mature physical years. And if you were very young, you will just grow and develop your true potential towards your natural prime of life and remain in that age for the rest of your time in heaven. The rest of your time in heaven. What does that imply? But hopefully gradually gaining maturity and wisdom in your mind and heart. When this difficult stage of disrupted consciousness passes and each new soul finds a calmer frame of understanding and acceptance of the new outcome, the true experience of heaven begins. and the loving radiance enfolding them quietly throughout their disturbed turmoil begins to grow and grow until it engulfs their heart and soul in ultimate bliss and joy. God's unbounded love of compensation, following their personal tragedies, is their gift of natural martyrdom. Interesting line, that. Heaven opens all her doors to each one, an endless opportunity to explore, learn, enjoy, and savor. Alongside this newfound joy, each individual soul will visit their earthbound loved ones in thought transportation to uplift them towards happiness once more, until both sides of the great divide are at peace. In calmer stability, each one can move forward in their separate existences with a greater sense of life's fulfillments, until one day in the fullness of your time on earth, your own time, the ultimate reunion takes place as those left behind in physical existence pass over into heaven to reunite with their dear, loved, lost ones from the catastrophe. We do hope this will bring special comfort to those of you on earth suffering the deep heartache of bereavement. The passing of time in between will appear as nothing at all one day. I'll now take you on a short tour of our various departments within this magnificent reception convalescent centre to help you understand the specialised fields of counselling. Our first port of call is to enter the Department of Telepathic Adjustment and Counselling. Here, disturbed patients are slowly given advice, exercises, and encouragement to learn to differentiate their varying degrees of thought sequence. In such sudden ejection into our dimensions, there had been no time to prepare their minds, which had become very confused and, illusory. We have to learn in heaven to control our thought sequences continually, since they are no longer strongly held back by a physical body. The new mind can run very freely and quickly, and at the same time manifest immediately what is visualizing. For example, imagine that you build up an impression of a bowl of fruit you would like to eat. On earth, you will need to go to a shop or market to buy what was in your mind, bring it home, and place the chosen varieties in a bowl. Much physical action has had to take place before that desire could be fulfilled. However, in our spiritual ethers, that visualization materializes in front of you immediately. If you want to place it on a table or on your lap, you only have to create the thought, and it happens. When human beings are in shock from a trauma, you can now appreciate that their minds will be floating around in all directions, with impressions building up around them constantly, and they find themselves in a wilderness of fast-moving images that never stop. The sleepful comas are indeed a temporary blessing. Upon each awakening, an experienced thought therapist purposely spotlights a healthy radiance of calm around their head to slow down the flow of images, and assists each patient by explaining the various exercises necessary to control the output, and also help them realize the difference between their own imagination and the reality of the convalescent surroundings where they are being cared for. Slowly and surely, they each come to terms with their new methods of discipline with much loving help throughout the various stages. The other very important department during the initial recovery stages is the counselling team, who are experienced in all forms of traumatic aftermath. This particular stage of reaction upon the newcomers demands great patience and compassion. Their first thought is a revelation slowly sinks into their minds as for their loved ones left behind. How will they manage without them? It's the most common dilemma. Or, how will they get on without me? Or, I want to go back and at once see them. Or, this can't happen to me, I'm going to wake up in a moment. Or, why should I die so young? Or, I can't stay here, there's much I wanted to do in life, I must go back. It breaks our hearts to witness such anguish and heartache in these tragic circumstances, but we have no choice but to apologize to each one for the unexpected outcome, which came without any due warning or mental preparation. Fate had struck them all down so suddenly with no time to face the inevitable consequences. Our experienced counselors and psychiatrists spent much time going over the endless repercussions in the minds of all the confused and angry patients, until a point of resignation slowly sets in. Every luxury and comfort is offered to them, from loving understanding, group therapy, soft music, and healing rays, flowers, fruit, good food, pleasant walks in the beautiful grounds, and visiting ministers of every creed and denomination who play out their sincere pastoral role of religious counseling and spiritual upliftment. However, many tears continue to be shed over the loss of loved ones left behind. Images of their faces, the happy times together, and other events of their life manifest like a personal video kaleidoscope over and over all around them. It is as if each new soul is immersed in reliving old times, day after day without any seeming end, until they realize these images are purely the result of their own recall and not the reality. It is at this point of bitter disappointment that anger erupts. How dare God, Allah, Buddha take me away from my family and friends? I'm going back and no one is going to stop me. And we don't. A mass exodus takes place as dozens of patients walk out of the convalescent centers to try to find their way back to Earth. Or so they think. In this particular disaster aftermath, they arrive on the beaches again without a boat in sight. The memory of their last moments flood back into their minds, and they automatically flee back inland in panic and terror, and don't stop until they become mentally exhausted, collapsing on the ground to sleep another sleep. These sleeping souls are slowly gathered up and taken back to their rooms. Upon reawakening, they are all relieved to be safe from the waves. These episodes may repeat themselves 2 or 3 times before the final reluctant acceptance dawns in their hearts, and the true radiance of heaven begins to grow and grow like an expanding aura of brightness around each soul body and beyond in the beautiful environment. It is the most rewarding sight to perceive their smiling faces at last, and individual resolutions to get truly well again, so that they can really visit their loved ones on earth. This is our third major department in the convalescent centers, which teaches and trains all the newcomers how to travel in thought projection to the earth plane, to indeed visit their grieving loved ones in your world. Once this has been achieved, their life in heaven begins. Some sections on attending to the children. Generally speaking, the children are far more accepting of the new afterlife than the adults. Upon the first awakening, the very small ones just lie in their new cots or beds, just looking up at the nurses and attendants, very curious. The look of bewilderment in their eyes is very tender to our hearts. A little while may pass before they begin to stir. At this point, they are picked up and cradled lovingly, stroked and caressed, until the warmth of our own thoughts brings a little smile to their lips. A beautiful soft toy identical to the one they may have left behind in physical life is placed in their hands. If they had been very deprived, the sight of a new soft toy will lighten up their eyes and face as they clutch it tightly and hold it close. Very rewarding and moving to see this little dawn of happiness, particularly if we are fully aware of the previous difficult background on earth of the child. But the very sad part is their sudden looking around for their mother or father who are absent, and the crying begins in earnest then. This is the most difficult period for all ages, if they are orphaned in heaven as such. Grandmothers and aunts already resident in our dimensions are always on hand to bring family comfort, but there is no substitute for a parent, particularly a mother. I first met other workers during what you would think of as the African famine passings. I was posted there for experience following my graduation from college. I arrived in the compound with the sight of others in the midst of half a dozen boys and girls pulling at a bright cotton skirt of some of the ladies. Several months of your Earth time passed before I found myself in this Ethiopian district to take up my first real posting. I bent down at one point to pick up two of the African children into my own arms from another, and we smiled broadly at each other. Our work took us to many other realms of rescue reception, whatever the children were involved, including the more recent Russian massacre. I helped out on that one, as you may recall from some of my books. Until this present overwhelming catastrophe in the Indian Ocean. This was to be the true test of our endurance alongside so many other helping volunteers. We were all very glad of our past experience to draw upon as we faced such a multitude of need. Part 6, Planning the Future and Visiting Earth. I am one of the many ladies and gentlemen that serve in the rehabilitation centres set up for this catastrophe. We are here to interview the countless casualties, whatever their age, and help them create a new future in our many dimensions. Once an immediate plan for the near future has been settled upon, the tormented new soul they can somehow begin to enjoy the greater calm and positive thoughts here. When the reception centres send us the reports of their change in their attitudes and acceptance of their new existence, we are then called upon to make visits to the wards and access the needs and desires of each individual. Many will have been separated from their families on earth, and many will be disturbed that they have left aspects of their life behind, unfinished and unresolved. They cannot go back to put it all in order, and this can bring much distress. Such sudden and immediate transition into our realms left no time at all to attend to such matters. And of course, when someone's slowly passing from a terminal disease, they have a fair bit of time to do all those sort of things. So that's a blessing in a way. Therefore, our departments of unfinished business are among the first they wish to visit, where our experts in these fields of counselling talk over their anxieties and suggest how they can help remedy the situations by thought infiltration to those near and dear to them left behind. This in itself entails special training to accomplish these ends and guide each man and woman towards a new peace of mind. Indeed, I know this from my own experience, not through disaster work, but just moving around the astral plane and talking to people that are wanting to go back and trying to convince them that not rush back, to get settled first and get calm and accepting of what's going on, and then they can go back with a peaceful heart. And that peaceful heart and mind is necessary when you want to do thought projection into your loved ones left behind, to either reassure them or to assist them in some way with the cleanup. If you go as a tormented soul, all upset, you can't do anything. You need the calmness and bit of foresight planning. Meanwhile, past relatives visit the new souls regularly in the reception centres, and slowly the new family members and long-settled loved ones exchange news and get to know each other. Some may never have met each other before, so it's a case of being introduced to virtual strangers. The past relatives can do a lot to help the newcomers by chatting about their own lives and experiences, and then offering to take them under their wings by inviting them into their own abodes as an initial taste of their new life beyond the reception centres. And I can certainly, agree with that in my own retrieval work that I've done, helping individual souls, not necessarily mass retrieval work. That often happens. They rest up in a reception center, and then, a grandmother, an aunt, a cousin, a buddy from college will show up and say, "Hey, you want to come and live at my place for a while? I got a spare bedroom." That sort of a thing. Some individuals may have been deeply deprived on earth, and so we endeavor to fulfill many lost needs or secret ambitions that were thwarted in their past life due to very limiting situation. It is as if heaven waves a magic wand and grants every possible lost opportunity to each and every one of the earth casualties as a fulfilling compensation for the great loss of their lives. Perhaps the greatest prize for many is the regaining of a youthful appearance for those who are mature in years prior to death. Well, of course, that happens to everyone that dies in age, but it's worth mentioning. Their delight to find themselves slowly gaining long-forgotten prime years of their 30s brings untold upliftment to their hearts. Their skin smooths out from wrinkles, their figures take on perfect proportions, and minds become alert and fully active once more. I notice they don't mention arthritis disappearing. They ought to. Aches and pains, that's a blessing. Let me tell you, when they go, they're gone. From the nursery years to young adulthood, we provide all the basic education they could wish for in knowledge and information, with a variety of curriculums, plus a strong influence upon human virtues and community social services. Tolerance, humility, selflessness, patience, and diligence begin at the earliest ages and continue in discipline long into adulthood. All the general subjects are multidimensional in our realms, owing to the fact that the thought sequences of every developing young soul is capable of creating mind visions instantly from the information given at each lesson. For example, a history lesson on the ancient Greeks can produce a video form of collective thought production, with encouragement from the teacher to allow the whole class to enjoy a first-hand experience of that long-lost era. Girls and boys will feel themselves dressed as Greeks, feel themselves walking the streets together or roaming the landscape, entering the buildings or meeting ancient Greeks in their everyday lives in a form of dream sequence that is real and educational. Geography would be the same with visits to different countries and continents. Languages would also come into this category. Storytelling would produce reality dream videos from the creative imaginations, and above all, artistic pastimes would bring endless designs and permutations from each individual pupil as they mold their thoughts into materialization. It is far more than just reading, writing, and practical experiments. It is all these activities alongside further three-dimensional and time-dimensional realities, rather like being within or a part of a film. Mature adults continue with the work or hobbies they enjoyed while most on Earth, ranging from the indoors to the outdoors. When they leave the reception centres, we encourage them to enjoy a well-deserved holiday of their own choice. This may take the form of a long stay with a lost relative or friend already existing here, or perhaps a time to explore a new environment of their former domain on Earth, or indeed travel to somewhere completely new they'd always dreamed of going to. The casualties from this particular catastrophe and indeed other disasters will be offered every possible opportunity to enjoy their first few months, your time, in heaven to overcome their frustrations or heartbreak. The healing balm of new horizons is indeed the joy we seek to bring them. Some souls decide, sometimes, not always, right at the beginning what they wish to do after their vacationary period in the way of continued work or profession, new college or training or apprenticeships, or seek to join a community of welfare services throughout the many realms. The choice is endless and echoes every possible enjoyment in physical life. Our halls of learning is already known amongst spirit communicating circles, offer wide curriculums of adult education from short day talks and lectures to week-long seminars and progressively longer periods of learning. Those who have suffered from little education on earth can start at the beginning and follow through to advanced studies. No one is allowed to feel inadequate in their understanding, but simply encouraged to go on at their own pace and make up what they may have lost. Heaven is here to provide the very best in educational upliftment for all concerned. Many who have a yen to learn a particular subject, craft, or intellect, but were never able to follow it through due to many limiting reasons, can fulfill their dream in great personal joy. Those who are quite undecided as to what they wish to do can wander through our special exhibition halls of many stalls, departments, film and lecture halls to ascertain a particular interest that may fire their imagination. These huge buildings promote every possible attraction toward new careers, vocations, and pastimes. Souls rarely visit such wonderful arenas of illustrative information without returning with great enthusiasm for several aspects of future employment that have captivated them. Several huge exhibition halls were built and set up for this tsunami disaster rescue realm to inspire hearts and minds. Schools, colleges, and universities also offered wonderful open days and weeks for inspection with a taste of all that is on their timetables, plus personal interviews with tutors and professors. Sounds busy, doesn't it? Booklets and brochures are available to take back, and all the World Web sites that so many of you are familiar with on Earth are here in special computer rooms with the highest and fastest mind research technology imaginable. Now there you go. They've got the internet in heaven, as if you ever doubted that they did. They probably had it there before they had it here. That's what I suspect. Finally, after much investigation and pleasurable visits to various promotional buildings, new souls are invited to the Rehabilitation Center to talk it all through with those of us on hand who would love to guide and advise. New homes, new surroundings, new interests, past experience, personal desires all need to be taken into consideration. This can sometimes be quite simple, but more often quite complicated, matching up all the various aspects. Applications, practical feasibilities, and possible availabilities must be taken into account very deeply. All these new souls, tragically aborted from physical life into our heavenly realms, require much adjustment to adapt to their new existence. We must deal, of course, with many cultures and nationalities, as well as many likely geographic locations. Immigration and emigration may be a high priority for many catastrophe victims, especially those residing in stricken areas. The fear and terror may precipitate the desire for a completely new country and lifestyle. We foster no restrictions in such a severe catastrophe as this. All are free to choose a new destination or return to their original habitat, which is reflected in our summer lands so very closely in landscape and community culture. Yes, the initial summerland levels for all cultures are very similar. They're set up that way so that people have a comfort zone. There are higher levels which are more challenging to the imagination, but you get to that later. The initial settlement, as I've discovered many times, is a template designed from how we are on Earth. Not exactly the same, but a more refined version of same. Our recovery realm contains wonderful healing vibrations within its atmosphere which provide a protective safety net for the thousands of new souls within its confines. When they are sufficiently recovered and settled, it allows them a gentle freedom to explore other frequencies. If they were to descend in thought too soon to the denser mental environment of Earth, they would be pulled down into a feeling of deep depression and may find it harder to rise up and come back into the comfort of our domains. For this reason, we keep them as long as possible in the recovery area to prepare them fully in thought sequence and discipline before taking this important maiden voyage to visit their relatives. Love, of course, is the bridge between heaven and earth. It is love and love alone which draws the minds and hearts of new souls toward their loved ones still in physical life. And it is these latter loved ones whose minds and hearts have been dwelling deeply upon those they have lost in grief and heartache. We tried hard to reassure them that although the heavy cloud of bereavement hangs over their loved ones back home, the higher powers of light and angelic protection would ultimately guide them back to balance and harmony in their lives on earth once more, however long it may take. This will depend entirely upon each individual capacity to accept and come to terms with the tragic loss. Every beauty and comfort will be brought back into their lives slowly and steadily, until a point is reached when they can move forward with their destinies. While our souls are being advised to plan their futures ahead in our dimensions, many lovely guides of all nationalities who shadowed every victim during their earthly existence, that's your guardian angel, infiltrate into the recovery realm to act as escorts for their prodigies on their earthly expeditions. Completely unknown to most of the tsunami casualties, these dedicated and trained souls are at last introduced to them, and yet another stage of awakening takes place. The surprise and wonder to discover that each individual has indeed a devoted guardian angel brings a new dimension of upliftment and deep appreciation of God's love and protection. On earth, your pilgrimage may take many twists and turns, but ultimately all your experiences will mold every facet of each new awareness into a clear and coherent purpose towards greater enlightenment and wisdom. Well, as they say, suffering creates character. And, it's true, it does. But, joy helps a bit too. The earthly vibrations will feel heavy and dense as the chosen parties slowly find themselves closer and closer to physical life. When they finally reach their particular geographical area through concentrated thought direction on the part of guides, the new heavenly souls must then begin to build up the images of their dear ones left behind on earth. Suddenly, without warning, they are instantly walking, standing, or sitting near their loved ones in their homes, work, or community, just as they remember these locations. But they are, of course, invisible and can no longer talk to them physically. However, their presence can often be felt quite strongly, as has been reported many times from those who have lost loved ones, in the normal way of death. It is by no means uncommon for a spirit to be seen at some point in the first few months. Each soul is advised beforehand to send out as much loving thought and cheerfulness as possible to bring them comfort. They will even put their invisible arms around their shoulders or stretch out an invisible hand to caress. Perhaps just living a day or so around their physical life helps them to feel they are still caring for them, although be it in thought only, and at the same time receiving a good idea of how they are coping. A new chapter. obviously an older soul. I myself have sojourned in the heavenly dimensions for numerous centuries, and during that extensive time as on earth, I have served humanity in the many different spheres. All that Father's house and many mansions stuff, it's true. And each so-called mansion or realm vibrates at varying thought frequencies in the graded degrees upwards to the very high realms of light. And boy, they are lighted. Yeah, not much in the way of landscapes or people, just a sea of light. Anyway, I've talked about that before. When I first passed into the afterlife, I remained close to the earthly vibrations for some while in order to uplift souls from traumatic deaths. The many centuries have brought untold wars, battles, plagues, torture, and martyrdoms, to name but a few, and like this particular natural disaster, as indeed like every other natural disaster, each has been attended to very deeply by our spirit domains. We will continue to do so while, sadly, there is a need. So earthquakes fulfill a need? Think about that for a minute. Gradually, I moved up the levels of spheres, experiencing and learning many lessons of understanding until I finally reached the realms of light. The beauty of that landscape is indescribable, really. The grace of architecture beyond compare, and the loving tolerance and unity of the inhabitants, whether socially high or low in the communities, is a true heaven. As the radiant environment shines its perfection upon the people, so they in turn reflect their own loving light back to enhance the overall beauty. However, many of these very evolved and perfected souls sacrifice this joy and happiness to travel down through the spheres from time to time with sincere purposes of lifting up minds and hearts and attitudes of the lower levels towards a truer perspective. I have been no exception and have gained a broader, more panoramic view of every aspect of life in the process. It is very necessary for those of us fortunate to reside in the realms of light, fortunate enough to take time out, as you might say, and gain further knowledge and experience of the lower levels, to ascertain the strengths and weaknesses of the continuing involvement of all souls. Otherwise, we become so imbued with the enfoldment of all the intense love, light, and beauty that we are in danger of being enclosed in an ivory tower. Yes, the paradise realms and beyond are... they do enclose you after a while. It's good to get away once in a while and check out how the other half live. The great varieties of life or existence in all dimensions is a diversity of endless fascination, whether good or bad, and our full experience of the overall picture increases the continuing depth of our understanding, which is greatly needed in all areas of human and other creature needs. Returning to tsunami rescue and recovery work, experienced brothers and sisters from every high level in heaven descend the spheres to be on hand and act as overseers in every department of the general awakening and rehabilitation. They mingle very humbly and diligently among all the helpers, bringing gentleness, patience, and understanding, and above all, human compassion. Long before this natural disaster took place, an incredible outpouring of radiance drifted down the many vibrational layers from the highest realms of light. It continued and continued, day and night, for days and weeks, slowly permeating every square inch of the potential areas likely to be stricken. Once those regions had been saturated with this very gentle power of ultimate healing energy, the world in general was illuminated with many other outpourings of heavenly radiance. Although, each according to their personal need, whether individual, family, group, or community. Especially those to be deeply involved in the earthly emergency services and aid, and the thousands of relatives likely to be deeply mourning. Alongside the preparational radiance descending to earth were countless angelic beings taking up their positions in every far corner of the zone. Their own strength of presence stood like beacons of fortitude before and during the onslaught, and their further healing rays enfolded the victims with heavenly upliftment. Many of you may be wondering, following my description of the long influx of radiance from heaven beforehand, that we must have known long in advance of the pending disaster. We did indeed, very sadly. There was nothing we could do to prevent the terrible catastrophe, and I cannot describe the intense anticipation which was suffered widely in our dimensions, knowing the likely enormous loss of life. The rescue realm was prepared in every possible detail, and the rescue training undertaking in the deepest endeavours. I myself worked upon many contingency plans alongside colleagues and associates for some considerable time beforehand. Future prediction of earthly calamities is carried out by our very own advanced so-called computer systems. The reported information, timing and conclusions are always very exact, allowing us due time to make our detailed plans for the rescue operations and subsequent recoveries following